going on, everybody? It's your boy Gsluke here with our DFS value picks for this week's FedEx St Jude Championship. It's the first leg of the playoffs, and here in this video, going to cover my top 6 plays priced $8,000 and below on Draftkings to help give you an idea of players you can get to save some salary, perhaps in a few cases, get some ownership leverage to the field, but most importantly, fit in an extra stud or two into your lineups. And particularly with this star-studded of a field, you're going to be oh so tempted to do so. So this video probably holding a little bit more weight this week than most, because making these decisions in the 7K range and the top of the 6K range going to be absolutely vital this week to go out there and win all the money. So not going to dilly-dally at all. Let's go ahead and hop right on in. The first value pick we'll touch on is going to be Corey Conners at $7,600. Most likely going to be the most chalky pick I give here, but it makes perfect sense. He is a picture perfect, fits like a glove course fit here with his accuracy off the tee, his approach play prowess, which he's been known for since he's burst onto the PGA Tour circuit, and on top of that, he's a pretty damn good Bermuda grass putter, where over his career, he's actually a gainer on the surface. You can see right here, gains 0.1 shots per round, so it's not anything significant, but when we can count on Corey to at the very least be a neutral putter, go out there, lean into his strengths with the ball striking, he's got, first off, an extremely high floor, but when you put him on Bermuda and he goes out there and spikes, for goodness sakes, I mean, you're looking at a legitimate contender to win. So at a track where accuracy off the tee is definitely going to be rewarded, he checks that box emphatically. One of the best players on tour when it comes to shots gained approach, and all of that is backed up with his recent form here. So if we go ahead and take a look at what that looks like, he's at $7,600. He's gaining close to 2/3 of a stroke per round off the tee. On approach, a little bit less significant, but again, close to 0.6 shots per round. You can't go wrong in either category. And despite being on a bent grass surface, a few bent POA mixes over the last 2 to 3 months, which is by far his least successful surface, the one that he loses the most strokes on, he's still been a slight gainer. So now that we're getting him on his bread and butter, what historically he's been able to translate to success, I expect that to improve even more. So if he goes out there, continues that ball striking baseline, maybe gains a quarter, a half a stroke per round on Bermuda this week, you could very well be looking at him hoisting the trophy at the end of the week, let alone posting a top 20, a top 15 finish, which in DFS might be enough to crack the optimal lineup, right? He's $7,600. And this is somebody I expect to have legit winning upside here. So Corey Conners is certainly going to be a popular pick this week. I mean, I'm hoping he's not going to be 20-25% owned, something in that 15 to 20% range. I'll probably just be stomachable, like enough to stomach there for my personal exposure. I don't like to play guys in the 7K range that are going to be 25-30% owned, but I'm just hoping maybe it's a little bit of wishful thinking at this point that he doesn't get to that level. But if he doesn't, for sure know that I'm firing him up in at least 30, maybe even 40% of my lineups. Next up, we've got Seamus Power at that same price tag of $7,600. And really here, you're looking at just a better player than his peers, right? Taylor Pendrith has been pretty solid of late. I mean, Davis Riley, a young up-and-coming rookie, but Seamus Power outside of the last major championship was top 15 in all 3 of them. On top of that, has multiple top 10 finishes this year, win on the PGA Tour here over the last season, and somebody who just, from an upside perspective, you want to play him at a short golf course because he is not particularly long off the tee, also not particularly accurate, but when you put him in the fairway, have him hit approach shots, he's going to be well better than the field. Around the green, he's well above average, and with the putter, he can get nuclear hot, and that's really the X factor for Seamus Power. He's going to be more than serviceable in the 3 tee to green categories. It's all about whether he can get that hot flat stick, and of late, despite not having the best finishes here on the PGA Tour, he's been quietly getting by with some pretty decent shots gained metrics, most significantly on approach, where, like I said, we can kind of rely on him to be one of the better ball strikers here in this range. Corey Conners in that same type of conversation. Same thing with the Davis Riley and Adam Scott. I mean, frankly, the whole top of the 7K range is just all the best approach players here. So I do think a lot of ownership is going to hover around these 5 or 6 players here from $77 down to $7,500. But the reason why somebody like Seamus Power, and same thing with Corey Conners, right? Because his putting stats on Bermuda are pretty damn decent. The reason why they stick out is the putting, right? On top of just putting themselves in position, they cash in a lot more often than their peers. And when you put them on Bermuda grass, that is certainly the case there too. For his career, Seamus Power is a gainer on Bermuda. If you put him on a few other surfaces, you'll see he's a little bit more inconsistent, most notably on POA, where he's a loser for his career on the bent POA mix. He's gotten better of late because of how well he's played over the last month or so, but it's still slightly worse than his numbers on Bermuda. So even though the putting has been better than what we've seen historically on this surface, I mean, we should expect him to maybe even improve on that, right? He's been in a hot stretch of golf. Now we get him going back to his comfortable surface where, again, it's been his bread and butter over the years. Really, just a lot of reasons to play Seamus Power this week. But most of all, I love Corey Connors' accuracy. He's going to be able to hit driver there a lot more often than most players. The reason why I like Seamus Power is he doesn't have to hit driver, right? If he wants to take driver out of hand, go out there with a 3-wood or a driving iron, he's going to have longer shots into greens, but he's going to have a much higher fairway percentage than pretty much all of his peers. And when you have that 2.5, 3-inch Bermuda grass rough, that can be extremely sticky in terms of penalty strokes per shot is close to a half a stroke penalty. That's going to pay huge dividends. So Seamus Power, a lot of other plotters who we'll talk about here in the video are certainly going to be in play, particularly when they're as skilled as Power is from fairway in. Next up, we've got Chris Kirk, who should be a little bit less owned. So those top two players at 7,600, like I mentioned, a lot of attention going to be going to them because of their approach stats. And Chris Kirk, on the other hand, despite posting a lot of really good finishes, might be a little bit overlooked because his approach stats are actually quite bad. So if we bring them up here at $7,300, or was he $7,400? Sorry about that. You'll see that he's gaining in every category but on approach. But if there's one thing historically we can count on Chris Kirk doing, it is gaining with the mid-irons. He's somebody who's not the longest player. He's more of a precision guy over a power guy. And of late, it's kind of been the twilight zone for him. I mean, losing on approach, you're not used to seeing that, and gaining a ton of strokes around the green and with the putting. And while he can do that from time to time, he's liable to spike with that category. It is certainly not something that we're used to seeing him consistently do. And during the Florida swing to begin this year, Chris Kirk was unbelievable with this form. If you remember, he was somebody we were almost locking week in and week out because of how well that he was playing. And when I look at a course comp, especially with all the water in play here, Bermuda grass surfaces, I really look at a lot of the Florida golf courses. I mean, Innisbrook, the Valspar, that is my number one comp for this week. I'm looking at PGA National, TPC, Sawgrass are all valid comps for this venue. Chris Kirk has had a ton of success around all of those venues. So he's being completely overlooked. I haven't really heard anybody talk about Chris Kirk all that much this week. And given his historical prowess with the irons, if there's anything we expect to rebound or to regress towards their mean, it would be the approach play, right? Off the tee, he's playing a little bit above his expectation. I'd argue the same thing with around the green and putting, but you love to see that. You love to see somebody who's figured it out with things that he historically hasn't been all that good at and has all that much potential to improve in the one category that he's usually so consistent at. So I love the course fit here. I love the course comps and some of his success in the past at those courses. And I like the shots gained profile that we're looking at here. Let's look at the course history. I don't believe he's played here all that often. You can see the last time he played here was back in 2018. He finished in 6th place, so you'll love to see that. The course fit there obviously paying off. Made the cut there in 2017 at the very least. Just to give you an idea with Corey Connors and Seamus Power, Power hasn't played here for a while, which is surprising, right? You'd expect him to be playing here of late, but back early in his career, he did make it here twice, a 12th and a 27th place finish. And while Corey Connors hasn't cracked that top end upside, he's made the cut in all 4 trips. So clearly that ball striking floor that he brings to the table has paid off over that sample size. And guys like Chris Kirk have shown that ability in the past, and I realistically would not be surprised at all to see him go out there and have a successful performance once again. Next up, we've got Alex Noren, who kind of bucks the trend a little bit here. He's a little bit more of a short game specialist than anything, and if we take a look at the recent form, he hasn't played very often. In fact, the last time he played was back at the Barracuda Championship, where he finished runner-up to Ches Reavie, had an extremely solid outing there over there in Tahoe. Before that, finished 30th at the Scottish Open, which was pretty decent. But before that, hadn't played until the U.S. Open. So this is somebody we haven't seen play all that often. But with the stats that we can take from Alex Noren, he's been pretty darn solid in every category but off the tee. And like I mentioned a little bit earlier, the one stat that I'm kind of throwing to the side is off the tee play. And I'll go ahead and explain it even more here, because I've seen a few people around the industry really weighing off the tee play this week. And frankly, I don't agree with it. A lot of the players that have had success here, Dustin Johnson, a Brooks Koepka, a Justin Thomas, are bombers. So a lot of people are looking at off the tee play, assuming that it correlates to success, but it's really a lot more about their approach play. Those years specifically, they were either number 1 or number 2 in shots gained approach. I look at that a lot more than off the tee play, especially just from watching the events, remembering what I've seen at TPC Southwind over the years. They hardly hit driver. I believe Dustin Johnson may have hit 1 or 2 drives the entire week. Brooks Koepka was a little bit more aggressive, but still was laying up in at least 7 or 8 tee shots around this venue out of 14 fairways. And then Justin Thomas was hitting those low stingers all day. Those type of plays off the tee are a lot more prominent than guys going out there and bombing driver all day. And if you're looking at off the tee stats, you're looking at mostly people hitting driver. And sure, you're going to have layup shots from courses, right? Those are included with off the tee stats, so that would be the counter argument. But at this golf course, you're going to lay up 3-4 times more often than most golf courses because of just how narrow these fairways are, the lack of distance at this golf course. I don't think you can look at driving stats in general and really make assertions that are reliable. You're looking at a sample size, at least in terms of off the tee shots with different clubs, that don't match up, right? It'd be like looking at 100-yard approaches for something that you're hitting 60 to 70 yards, right? It's not calibrated correctly. So for me, off the tee play, I don't want to say I'm completely ignoring it, because like guys like Corey Connors, for example, that are both long and straight off the tee, I think they're going to have a huge advantage this week. But for somebody like Alex Noren, who's been bleeding strokes off the tee, I'm a lot more willing to let that go, because he should 100,000% this week be going out there and laying up off the tee. I mean, if he has any sort of sense this week, should be hitting a ton of driving irons, a ton of 3-woods or hybrids off the tee. Just get it out there, bunt it, 250 to 280 yards, and you're still going to have at the very most 160, 175 yards into most of these greens, which should be a scoring club, particularly for somebody of his skill set, who's both an elite level approach player, a great iron player. You saw that over there at the Barracuda, but also an elite level putter. And when you put him on Bermuda grass, he is just as good. You can see for his career gaining 0.53 shots per round on the surface. So I love what I'm seeing from Alex Noren. Clearly should fit the golf course pretty well with his lack of off the tee success, but everything from fairway in is going to be top notch. And the recent form, hasn't seen him play very much, but I'll take it, right? Second place finish. Made the cut at the Scottish. That's pretty decent form. Before that, obviously missed the cut at the U.S. Open. But if there's going to be a field or an event or a golf course where I'm willing to look past a missed cut, it's probably going to be that U.S. Open at Brookline, where we had the weather edge. It was extremely difficult, major championship level field. So for Alex Noren, he's burned me a lot in the past, but he's also made me a lot of money on the flip side. Going to be somebody I'm playing in plenty of lineups. Next up, we've got ourselves Denny McCarthy, and at $7,100, I really like his upside here. Coming in off a missed cut where a lot of people got burned by him, I don't expect him to be as popular as he should be, because at TPC Sawgrass, a lot of those Florida tracks where it's all about positioning off the tee, realistically, fairway into green is going to be the most important stat to look at. Denny McCarthy's had a lot of success at those golf courses, and on top of that, even with the missed cut included here, you can see his shots gained metrics are still eye-popping. So off the tee, much like an Alex Noren, is losing there. I'm not all that worried about it. On approach, still gaining. Around the green, he's always going to be a gainer, but gaining 1.1 shots gained per round on the greens. Now, a lot of the winners here, right, are approach play specialists. They're not going to be world-class putters. Now, Dustin Johnson, he can be a world-class putter, but did it that week with a lot of the off the tee and the approach play. Denny McCarthy might not win win this event, but you don't need him to win at $7,100. Very similar to a Corey Connors, a top 10, a top 15 finish, maybe even a top 20 finish at $7,100 should be more than enough, especially in a single entry or a 2 to 3 max format. And with how hot he can get with the putter and some of the approach play upside that he's shown this year, he's more than capable of cracking the top 5 to top 10. And I can guarantee you at $7,100, that is going to get into the optimal build. So I really like his chances to bounce back here. I hope he's relatively low owned. I think that there will be people out there who are keen to this bounce back opportunity that can see some of his performances at comp courses like a TPC Sawgrass, for example. A lot of the courses down there during the fall swing. So I don't think he'll be completely overlooked, but look at these Bermuda grass numbers. 0.72 shots gained per round, right? You're not going to find a better number in the field or anybody with a legitimate sample size. All right, the last value pick I want to touch on here is going to be Jhonattan Vegas at $6,600. He's towards the middle of that 6K range, and in terms of pedigree, there's not really anybody that stands out too much. But in terms of top end upside, Jhonattan Vegas is a lot more liable to finish in the top 5 to top 10 than pretty much any of his peers in this range. And for him, it comes down to the ball striking upside. He brings it pretty much week in and week out. Is going to gain a bunch of strokes off the tee. Now this week, that might not be available to him, but the important part with Jhonattan Vegas is we've seen him at short positional courses in the past have a ton of success. Go out there, gain 7 to 8 strokes on approach. The X factor is the putting, where he's not consistent. You can see of late, if we go down to his shots gained here, he's actually losing quite significantly to the field. In fact, close to 2/3 of a stroke per round, still gaining off the tee like you'd expect. Marginal gainer on approach like we're used to seeing for Jhonattan Vegas, but on Bermuda grass, for whatever reason, he gains a ton of strokes. So you can see 0.28 shots per round on Bermuda grass is the baseline I'm working with, but at these short positional courses, we've seen him gain 6 to 7 strokes at those sort of courses. So though his one major weapon is certainly taken away here, I think that's why his betting odds are as high as they are, why he's only $6,600, why in terms of my modeling, it absolutely hates him this week, because pretty much what he does well is being rolled out of my modeling. But he has just so much upside with that approach play. With the putting on Bermuda, I still think he can get there. He's shown it at the RBC Heritage. He's played well at some of these short positional Florida tracks where driver is taken out of his hands. And I think he's just a better player than people want to give him credit for. So at these sort of events where, it's not a birdie fest, it's not about bombing it off the tee, no one wants to play a Jhonattan Vegas, but where we've seen him finish in the top 5 to top 10 the most are at these events. So, look at the course history, look at the comp courses, right? That's why we, put them in our analysis, make them a part of what we do, because that can give you a really good idea of where players actually shine versus, where we think they should shine. Sometimes those two things don't necessarily align. So I like Jhonattan Vegas. Let's look at the course history. I actually haven't took a gander at this. I don't think he's played here all that often. He's made the Tour Championship a few times, though. Yeah, over the last 5 years, hasn't played here. His recent form, it's worth taking a look at. It hasn't been all that good, but he's still making cuts, right? 49th at the Rocket Mortgage, okay, right? 36th at the Scottish, okay. Sure, he missed the cut at the Travelers. That's a little bit concerning, but you're talking about a $6,600 golfer. You're not investing an arm and a leg to a player down here, and he's coming in off injury. I think a lot of people forget about that too. Just started playing again about 2 months ago on the PGA Tour. I'm sure he's starting to get some of that rust off, and if this ends up being a breakout spot for him, you're looking at an extremely low-owned value pick here in the 6K range that could legitimately crack that top 10. All right, boys, that's all I've got for the value picks this week. Before you hop on out of here, go ahead and smash that like button. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel if you haven't already. That way you don't miss any of the content I post in the future. We will have fades and sleepers dropping a little bit later on. Our weekly DFS live stream Wednesday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern time. There you can come by with any questions that you have, any players you want a deep dive on that I wasn't able to touch on in my free content. We'll talk the weather, some strategy talk for GPPs, just everything you need to know before lock, and it's close to lock, right? Obviously, they're at a 7 p.m. on a Wednesday, so you're getting the most actionable data out there possible, right? As close to lock ownership numbers, going to be as accurate as humanly possible, which makes it a great opportunity to stop on by. And even if you've already made your lineups, just check on them, right? Do a little bit of homework, do some double checking, make sure that everything makes sense from that perspective. So I highly recommend you guys go ahead and set a reminder for that. But until then, best of luck with all of your lineups this week. I appreciate you guys stopping by, showing me all the love that you guys do on these videos. It really helps me out with growing the channel, and going to be at 2,500 subscribers soon. So we're working towards that. Hopefully can hit that here in the next month, maybe before the next season starts. But again, thank you guys for all the support, and I'll catch you guys next time.